You wake up burning with fever. Your leg is swollen, hot to the touch, infected from a cut that wouldn't stop bleeding. There's no antibiotic, no clinic down the road, no one coming to save you except the 15 people you've lived alongside your entire life. And what they choose to do next determines whether you're still breathing in a week. Today, when you get sick, you take some medicine, maybe see a doctor, and get back to your life within days. For most of human history, that same infection had a real chance of killing you. No germ theory. No idea why wounds turned green and started to smell. No understanding of what a fever even was, only that people who got hot and stopped eating sometimes didn't wake up. So when someone in the group fell seriously ill, what actually happened next? Let's start with what the bones tell us, because bones don't lie. In 2001, archaeologists working in Dmanisi, Georgia, uncovered a skull dating back roughly 1.8 million years. It belonged to an older adult who had lost every single tooth years before death, and the jawbone had fully healed over, smooth and reabsorbed. No teeth means no chewing. No chewing means no raw meat, no tough roots, nothing that keeps a person alive without help. Someone was softening food for this person, or chewing it first and passing it along for years. This wasn't an act of desperation. It was routine care, repeated every single day, long before anything we'd recognize as medicine existed. Then there's Shanidar Cave in Iraq, one of the most studied Neanderthal sites on Earth. One skeleton found there, known as Shanidar 1, is missing most of one arm, is blind in one eye, and shows advanced arthritis through the spine and joints. Researchers estimate he lived to around 40, which for a Neanderthal is remarkably old. He couldn't hunt. He couldn't defend himself. And yet the group kept him alive for years, maybe decades, after an injury that should have ended everything. That kind of survival doesn't happen through luck. It happens because somebody decided it mattered. Broken bones tell a similar story. Archaeologists studying Neanderthal and early Homo sapiens remains have found healed fractures, arms, legs, ribs, that set at angles consistent with the limb being immobilized during recovery, not left to heal on its own. A badly set fracture heals crooked and often stays weak forever. A well-set one, stabilized against something rigid and kept still for weeks, heals straight. Finding straight, well-aligned healed breaks in the fossil record tells us someone understood, at least through trial and error, that a broken limb needed to be held in place to heal properly, and someone was willing to keep tending it, day after day, until it did. But here's where it gets more specific. Because ancient humans weren't just caring for the sick, they were treating them. At El Sidrón Cave in Spain, researchers analyzed hardened dental plaque preserved on 49,000-year-old Neanderthal teeth and found traces of yarrow and chamomile, two plants with almost no nutritional value but well-documented bitter medicinal properties still used in herbal remedies today. One individual studied had a dental abscess and intestinal parasites and was eating these specific bitter plants despite them offering no calories at all. The only reasonable explanation is that this Neanderthal knew or had been taught that these particular plants helped when you were sick. And it goes further back than that. Chimpanzees today are known to seek out specific bitter-tasting plants when they have parasites, plants they otherwise avoid completely, suggesting this kind of self-medicating instinct may predate humans entirely. If our closest living relatives already do this, it's not a stretch to think our ancestors carried the same instinct forward and refined it into shared, teachable knowledge over hundreds of thousands of years. Wounds themselves were treated too, not just left to fester. Researchers studying traditional hunter-gatherer groups have documented wound care practices, ash rubbed into cuts to dry them out, certain tree resins applied as a kind of natural sealant, and heated stones or embers used to cauterize wounds that wouldn't stop bleeding. None of these groups understood bacteria, but they understood, through generations of watching what worked and what didn't, that a cleaned and sealed wound survived more often than one left open. Now, here's the part that surprises most people. Some ancient humans didn't just treat wounds and illness, they performed surgery. Trepanation, the practice of deliberately cutting or drilling a hole into the skull, shows up at archaeological sites across the world, from Peru to France to China, dating back at least 7,000 years. And the truly remarkable part isn't that they attempted it, it's that many patients survived. Archaeologists can tell because the bone around the hole shows signs of healing and regrowth, meaning the person lived for months or years afterward. Someone was performing a skull surgery with stone tools, no anesthesia, no understanding of infection, and getting it right often enough that survival wasn't rare. So how did they know any of this worked? Trial, error, and memory passed down through generations. A plant that reduced swelling got remembered and reused. A splint that healed a leg straight got taught to the next person. A treatment that made the fever break became something the whole group knew to try next time. Over tens of thousands of years, this accumulated into something that functioned like medicine without anyone ever writing a single word of it down. But treatment wasn't the whole story. Ancient groups also understood something we tend to associate with much more recent history: containment. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer groups have documented that when illness spreads through a camp, sick individuals are sometimes moved to separate shelters, away from children and the elderly, until symptoms pass. There's no germ theory behind this, it's pattern recognition, built from watching illness spread from person to person for generation after generation and responding to that pattern even without understanding the mechanism behind it. Now, here's where the story takes a turn nobody expects, because caring for the sick wasn't cheap. Every hour spent feeding someone who couldn't feed themselves, every plant gathered that offered no calories, every day a hunter stayed back to watch over the injured instead of hunting, was time and energy the entire group could have spent purely on its own survival. In the animal kingdom, an injured or sick individual is usually left behind or abandoned because caring for them offers no evolutionary advantage to the group. But ancient humans did it anyway, over and over again, across every continent we have evidence for, in populations that were often just barely surviving themselves. That changes how we should think about what actually made our species survive. It wasn't just fire or tools or bigger brains, it was the decision, made countless times by countless groups, that a sick or injured person was still worth keeping alive. That decision had no immediate payoff. It cost calories, time, and risk. And it happened anyway, long before anyone had a word for compassion. So somewhere, tens of thousands of years ago, someone chewed food for a person who couldn't chew their own. Someone gathered bitter plants they knew wouldn't taste good and wouldn't fill a stomach because they remembered it helped the last person who was sick. Someone splinted a shattered leg and sat with it for weeks until it healed straight. Someone cut into another person's skull with a sharpened stone and somehow got it right. None of them knew what a virus was. None of them understood infection. But they understood something that mattered just as much, that the people around you are worth keeping alive, even when it costs you everything to do it. And every single time you've been taken care of while sick, you're living proof that decision never stopped being made.